I was 28 when this happened. Old enough to know better, but still young enough to think I could handle anything the road threw at me. It was early October, and my little sister Emily had just finished her first semester at the University of Georgia. She called me up one Thursday night, excited about some early academic achievement ceremony the school was holding that weekend. I was living in Cleveland at the time, working a desk job that paid the bills but didn't give me much reason to smile. Emily was the opposite. Bright, driven, always had something to look forward to. When she asked if I could make it down for the ceremony, I didn't even hesitate. I told her I'd be there. The drive from Cleveland to Athens was about 10 hours if you took Interstate 75 straight down, but I'd driven that route before and it was boring. Just endless highway, truck stops, and chain restaurants. So I pulled up Google Maps and started looking for alternatives. That's when I saw it. A route that cut through eastern Kentucky and into Tennessee, shaving off almost 2 hours. It went right through the heart of Appalachia, the mountains. I'd never been through that part of the country before, and the idea of scenic backroads appealed to me. I packed a duffel bag, filled up my Civic, and left Saturday morning under a clear blue sky. My roommate, Derek, saw me loading up the car and asked where I was headed. When I told him Appalachia, he gave me this look. Not quite concerned, but something close to it. He didn't say anything, just nodded and went back inside. I didn't think much of it at the time. The first 4 hours were easy. I made it through Ohio and into Kentucky without issue, stopped once for gas and a sandwich. By the time I hit the eastern part of the state, the landscape started to change. Flat farmland gave way to rolling hills, then steep ridges covered in thick forest. The interstate eventually ended and I merged onto a 2-lane highway. That was fine. Still plenty of traffic, still felt normal. But then around 4 in the afternoon, my GPS told me to take a right onto County Road 40. I hesitated for a second. The road looked narrow and there weren't any signs indicating where it led. But the map showed it as a direct shot south, so I turned. At first it was fine. A few houses scattered along the roadside, some with cars parked out front. But after about 15 minutes the houses stopped. The road got narrower. Trees pressed in on both sides, their branches forming a canopy overhead that blocked out most of the sunlight. The asphalt turned rough, full of potholes and cracks. I slowed down, trying not to bottom out my car. That's when I saw the sign. It was old, made of wood, leaning slightly to the left like it might fall over any second. The paint was faded, but I could still make out the words. Harlan Ridge, 12 miles. Something about the name felt familiar, like I'd heard it before but couldn't remember where. I checked my phone. No signal. The GPS was still working, but the map had stopped showing street names. Just a blue line on a blank screen. I figured I'd drive the 12 miles, hit the next town, and get back on track. The road kept winding, getting tighter with every turn. I hadn't seen another car since I left the highway. The sun was sinking behind the ridgeline, and shadows were starting to stretch across the road. I turned my headlights on, even though it wasn't quite dark yet. I'd gone maybe 8 or 9 miles when I heard it, a ticking sound coming from under the hood. Tick, 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 rhythmic and faint at first, then louder. I eased off the gas, but the sound didn't stop. Then the engine just cut out. No sputter, no warning lights, no grinding. It was like someone flipped a switch. The car went silent. I coasted to a stop on a sharp curve, the kind where you can't see what's coming from either direction. I tried turning the key. The dashboard lit up. The radio came on. But the engine wouldn't turn over, just a clicking sound every time I twisted the key. I tried 5 or 6 times, same result. I popped the hood and got out. It was colder than I expected. I grabbed my phone and used the flashlight to check the engine. Battery looked fine. No loose wires, no leaking fluids. Everything seemed normal. I got back in and tried the key again. Nothing. I sat there for a minute trying to think. I could wait for another car to come by, but I hadn't seen one in over an hour. I could try walking, but I didn't know how far the next town was. That's when I noticed it, the silence. It wasn't just quiet, it was dead silent. No birds, no wind moving through the trees, no insects buzzing. I'd been in the woods before plenty of times and there's always some kind of noise. But here there was nothing, just my breathing and the faint hum of my phone. I stepped out of the car again and stood there listening. The silence felt heavy, like it was pressing down on me. I looked around. The trees were so thick I couldn't see more than 20 feet into the woods on either side of the road. The curve behind me disappeared into shadow. I felt my chest tighten. I decided to walk. I grabbed my small backpack, a flashlight from the glove box, and a water bottle. I locked the car and started down the road, keeping my phone in my hand just in case the signal came back. After about 10 minutes, I saw a house. It was on the left side of the road, set back maybe 30 feet. A single-story wooden structure, painted white but peeling badly. The fence around the yard had collapsed in places, and the front steps looked like they might give way if you put any weight on them. The windows were broken, curtains hanging in shreds, but what got me was the door. It was halfway open. I stopped at the edge of the yard and called out, "Hello? Anyone home?" No answer. I stepped closer, my flashlight beam cutting through the dim light. The porch creaked under my feet. I called out again. Still nothing. I pushed the door open wider and stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Mildew, rot, and something else I couldn't place. Dust covered everything. The furniture was still there. A couch, a coffee table, a TV set that looked like it was from the 80s. On the dining table, there were plates with food still on them. The food had gone black with mold, but you could still tell what it used to be. Mashed potatoes, maybe some kind of meat. I turned and saw a framed photo on the wall. A family. A man and a woman, 3 kids standing in front of them. The photo was black and white, old. I called out one more time, but my voice just echoed back at me. I left the house and kept walking. Over the next 20 minutes, I passed 2 more houses. Both abandoned, both in the same condition. Doors open, belongings left behind, like everyone just walked away in the middle of dinner. I kept walking until I couldn't see the last house anymore. The road stretched ahead, winding through the trees. That's when I looked down and saw them. Footprints in the dirt on the shoulder of the road. Fresh ones, boot prints size 11 or 12 heading off the road and into the woods. I stopped. My first thought was relief. Someone else was out here, maybe they could help. I called out, "Hey, I need help." Nothing. I stared at the footprints. They were clear, recent. I made a decision I regret to this day. I followed them. The prints led into the trees, weaving between trunks and over roots. I kept my flashlight trained on the ground, trying not to lose the trail. After about 50 steps, the prints turned left. I followed. The woods were dense, branches scraping against my jacket. I kept going. Then after maybe 5 minutes, the trees opened up and I was standing on the road again, right next to my car. I stopped cold. That didn't make sense. I'd walked in a straight line, or at least I thought I had. There was no way I should have ended up back here. I turned around and looked at the woods. The footprints led right back to where I'd come from. I checked the compass on my phone. The needle spun in circles, never settling on a direction. I felt my pulse quicken. I looked at the trees more closely. That's when I saw them. Symbols carved into the bark. Circles with an X inside, not just on one tree, on all of them. Dozens of trees, all marked the same way. Every symbol faced the road like they were pointing at something. I stood there staring at the symbols, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Then I heard it. "Help me." I froze. It was a voice, a girl's voice. Emily's voice. "Please, I'm lost." I turned toward the sound. It was coming from the woods behind my car. I know it sounds crazy, but it sounded exactly like her. The same tone, the same slight rasp she gets when she's been crying. "Emily," I called out. No answer. Then quieter this time. "I'm here, please." I started walking toward the voice without thinking. My brain was screaming at me to stop, but my legs kept moving. I pushed through the brush, flashlight swinging wildly. "Emily, where are you?" The voice called again, farther away now, this way. I broke into a run, branches whipping across my face, roots trying to trip me. I kept calling her name. Then the voice stopped, just cut off mid-sentence. I skidded to a halt, breathing hard, and listened. That's when I heard the laughter, not one voice. Many. Men, women, children. All laughing at once, high-pitched and sharp, echoing through the trees. I spun around, trying to pinpoint where it was coming from, but it surrounded me. Then I saw the lights, 5 of them hanging in the darkness between the trees. They looked like lanterns, but they weren't sitting on the ground. They were floating, swaying gently back and forth. And they were moving toward me. I didn't wait to see what they were. I ran. I crashed through the woods, not caring where I was going, just trying to get away. I fell twice, scraped my hands and knees, but I didn't stop. I lost the flashlight somewhere along the way. All I had was the glow from my phone, and the battery was down to 23%. When I finally burst out of the trees, I saw my car, but something was wrong. The car wasn't where I'd left it. It was facing the other direction, nose pointed back the way I'd come. I stopped, chest heaving, and stared. The driver's side mirror was shattered, glass scattered on the ground below it. I approached slowly. The doors were locked. I know they were locked because I'd locked them myself. I pulled out my keys and unlocked the door. When I sat down in the driver's seat, I felt something wet. I turned on the interior light. The seat wasn't wet with water. It was wet with blood. Not a lot, just a few streaks, like someone had wiped their hand across it. On top of the seat was a gray knit hat, old, frayed at the edges. I'd never seen it before in my life. I picked it up, and underneath was a piece of paper folded in half. I unfolded it. The handwriting was shaky, written in black ink. "We've been waiting. You shouldn't have come back." I stared at the words. Come back? I'd never been here before. I threw the paper and the hat out the door and tried to start the car. The key wouldn't turn the engine over. I tried again. And again. Nothing. I sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Then, without warning, the engine roared to life. I hadn't turned the key. The headlights switched on by themselves, flooding the road ahead. The radio crackled on, blasting static so loud I had to cover my ears. I didn't think. I just slammed my foot on the gas. The car lurched forward, tires squealing. I drove as fast as I could on that narrow, winding road, barely slowing for the curves. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I was terrified I'd see something sitting in the backseat. After what felt like forever, I saw a sign for County Road 40. I took the turn hard and kept going. Another 30 minutes passed before I saw lights. A gas station, old and run down, but it was open. I pulled in and ran inside. The woman behind the counter was in her 60s, gray hair tied back in a bun. She looked at me and frowned. "You okay, son?" I told her I'd gotten lost, that my car had broken down near a place called Harlan Ridge. She stared at me. "Harlan Ridge? Ain't no place by that name around here." I pulled out my phone. The signal was back. I searched for Harlan Ridge. Nothing. No results. I asked if I could use her phone to call the police. She handed it over and I dialed. 2 officers showed up 20 minutes later. I told them everything. They wrote it down, but I could tell they didn't believe me. One of them said people get turned around in the national forest all the time. He suggested maybe I'd taken a wrong turn, got confused in the dark. They said they'd look into it, but there was no road called Harlan Ridge on any map they had. I didn't argue. I got back in my car and drove straight through the night. I reached Emily's apartment in Athens at 6 in the morning. When she opened the door, she looked surprised. "You're early," she said. I hugged her tight and didn't let go for a long time. I told her I'd hit some traffic but made it through. I didn't tell her what really happened. That was 2 years ago. I still drive down to see Emily a few times a year, but I never take the back roads. I stay on the interstate, even if it adds hours to the trip. Sometimes, late at night, I still dream about those lights in the woods, and I still hear Emily's voice calling my name from somewhere I can't reach. Growing up in Kentucky, I learned to love road trips early. Not the interstate kind with rest stops every 20 miles, but the back roads. The kind where you roll the windows down, let the mountain air fill the car, and drive until the pavement turns to gravel. My dad used to take me on drives through Appalachia when I was young, and something about those winding roads, the way they disappeared into fog and forest, always felt like freedom. That feeling is probably why what happened last October still makes my hands shake when I pass an unmarked exit. It started with my cousin Sarah. She had been digging through old travel blogs one night, the kind from before social media took over, and found this post from 2009 about a scenic route through the mountains of West Virginia. The blog hadn't been updated in years, just a few blurry photos of a forest road in a small town called Greyhollow. The writer described it as untouched and beautiful, a place that time forgot. Sarah called me up excited, said we should check it out. I brought in Marcus, a coworker who was always up for an adventure, and we planned a 3-day weekend trip. Nothing complicated, just drive out there, see what we could find, maybe get some good photos. We left early Friday morning. The drive took us about 5 hours to get into the mountains. For the first few hours, everything was normal. We stayed on the main highways, passed through a few small towns, stopped for gas and coffee. But once we followed the GPS off the main route onto State Route 47, things started to feel different. The road got narrower. Trees pressed in closer on both sides. After about 45 minutes, the asphalt turned to gravel, and we hadn't seen another car in either direction for miles. Marcus was driving. He glanced at the GPS and frowned. Sarah sat in the back scrolling through her phone. I watched the trees go by, dense and dark, even though it was only afternoon. The radio started cutting out, just static and occasional bursts of music before fading again. Sarah tried her phone. No signal. She looked up and said, "Feels like we are driving backwards in time." I laughed, but she wasn't wrong. Everything felt older out here. The road, the trees, even the light filtering through the leaves seemed dim and heavy. Then we saw the sign. Old wood, weathered gray, leaning slightly to the left. It read Greyhollow, 8 miles. The letters were carved deep but faded. Marcus slowed down. None of us said anything. We just kept going. The sky got darker as we drove, thick clouds rolling over the peaks and blocking the sun. By the time we reached the town, it was nearly 5:15 and felt like dusk. Greyhollow was small. One main street, maybe a dozen buildings total. Houses made of wood with peeling paint, a general store with a faded awning, a gas station with old pumps, and a tiny post office. But there was nobody. No cars parked on the street, no lights in the windows, no movement anywhere. Just empty, except the street lights. They were on, glowing pale yellow, even though there was still some daylight left. Marcus pulled up in front of the general store and turned off the engine. The silence hit us immediately. We got out and looked around. The store had a locked door, but through the dusty window we could see shelves still stocked with cans and boxes, all covered in a thick layer of dust. Marcus walked over to the gas station and tried the door. Locked tight. Sarah took a few photos with her phone and said, "This is creepy but kind of cool." Her voice sounded too loud in the quiet. I felt uneasy. Not scared exactly, but like we were being watched. The air felt heavy, almost oppressive. I suggested we just sleep in the car for the night and figure things out in the morning. Marcus had an SUV with enough room for the 3 of us to stretch out. We parked in the middle of the main street, locked the doors, and ate the sandwiches we had packed. Marcus tried the radio again but got nothing except static. By 8 o'clock, it was fully dark outside, and those streetlights were still glowing even, though we couldn't see any power lines or generators anywhere. I volunteered to stay awake first and keep watch. Sarah curled up in the back seat with a blanket. Marcus leaned his seat back and closed his eyes. I sat there staring out the windshield at the empty street. Around 11 o'clock, I saw something. A shadow, human-shaped, walking slowly across the far end of the street near the post office. It moved from one side to the other and disappeared around the corner of a building. My heart started pounding. I couldn't tell if it was real or just my eyes playing tricks in the dim light. I didn't wake the others. I just watched, but nothing else moved for the rest of the night. When morning came, gray and cold, we were all stiff and tired. Marcus stretched and groaned. Sarah sat up, rubbing her eyes. We decided to look around and see if we could find anyone or at least figure out where we were. The post office door was cracked open, so we went inside. Dust covered everything. A desk with papers still on it, a calendar on the wall stuck on September 1987. There were bins filled with letters that had never been delivered. Sarah found a ledger with names and addresses. Only 43 people listed. Marcus picked up an old newspaper from the desk. The headline was blurry but readable. Town Council votes to close route access. The date was September 1987. "This place has been empty for almost 40 years, Sarah whispered. We left the post office and walked down to a blue wooden house with the front door hanging open. Inside, the furniture was still arranged like someone had just stepped out. A couch, a coffee table, family photos on the walls. 5 people smiling in the pictures. A mom, dad, and 3 kids. In the kitchen, dishes sat on the table like a meal had been interrupted. Sarah called out hello, but nobody answered. We stood there for a moment, then headed back outside. That's when we saw it. The car had moved. We had parked it directly in front of the general store. Now it was about 50 feet down the street near the gas station. All 3 of us froze. Marcus said quietly, "Did we park it there?" I knew we hadn't. I was absolutely sure, but there it was. We walked over slowly, not saying anything. My mouth went dry. We climbed in and locked the doors immediately. Marcus started the engine and said, "We need to get out of here." He drove forward, following the main road back the way we had come in. We drove for about 10 minutes, paying attention to every turn. But then we were back in front of the general store. Same spot. Like we had driven in a circle. Sarah leaned forward from the back seat. What just happened? We tried again. This time Marcus took a different route, a narrow road between 2 houses that led into the woods. We followed it for a while. The trees thick on both sides until the road curved and we came out on the other end of the main street. We were back in Greyhollow. Sarah's voice rose. "What is happening?" I checked my phone. No signal. The GPS on Marcus's dashboard just kept saying recalculating over and over, the screen frozen. We tried one more time, driving slowly and carefully, watching every detail. After 15 minutes, we were right back where we started. It was like the town wouldn't let us leave. Marcus gripped the steering wheel hard. His knuckles turned white. I suggested we wait until tomorrow and try again in daylight. Maybe we were just disoriented. We parked in front of a small church at the end of the street and waited. By 6 in the evening, it was dark again. We ate some crackers and granola bars, barely talking. At 9, we heard it, a soft knock on the rear window. All 3 of us turned around, nothing there. A few minutes later, another knock, this time on the driver's side door. Marcus turned on the headlights. The street was empty. Then at 11, we heard a voice outside. It sounded exactly like Sarah. "Can you help me? I am lost." But Sarah was sitting right there in the back seat, her face pale. The voice came again. "Please, I need help." Then a different voice, Marcus's voice, said from outside, "We should get out and check." But Marcus was sitting frozen next to me, his mouth shut tight. Then my own voice came from somewhere in the darkness. "It is okay. We are safe here." I had not said that. I had not said anything. We sat in silence, barely breathing, until the voices stopped about 20 minutes later. None of us slept that night. When the sun finally came up around 6:30 Saturday morning, we were exhausted and terrified. Marcus noticed something on the windshield. A photo. He pointed at it and Sarah opened her door carefully, grabbed it and brought it inside. It was a Polaroid, old and faded yellow with torn edges. The image showed 3 people standing in front of a gray SUV. A man, a younger woman, and an older man. They were standing right in front of the general store in Greyhollow. And they looked exactly like us. Same faces. But the clothes were different, older styles, like something from the 80s. On the back, written in faint handwriting, were 4 words. "We stayed too long." Sarah dropped the photo. Her hands shook. Marcus said, "We need to leave. Now." I stared at the picture on the floor. Those people looked like us. But the photo was decades old. Were we trapped here like they had been? Would we end up like them, stuck forever in this town that didn't exist on any map? I said, "We are getting out of here, no matter what." Marcus nodded and started the engine. He put the car in drive and pressed the gas pedal all the way down. We shot forward, racing down the main street. After about 5 minutes, we saw something we hadn't seen before. A wooden barricade stretched across the road, old and rotting. Marcus didn't slow down. He aimed straight for it and we crashed through. The wood splintered and broke apart. The road suddenly became wider, smooth black asphalt. The radio blared to life, loud country music filling the car. The GPS screen lit up, and a calm voice said, "Turn left in 500 feet to reach Route 19. We didn't say anything. We just kept driving. 10 minutes later, we passed a truck going the opposite direction. The first vehicle we had seen in 2 days. 15 minutes after that, we saw the green sign for State Route 19. Marcus turned onto it and we headed south as fast as we could. I looked back in the side mirror and saw one more sign at the edge of the road. The old wooden Greyhollow sign, but the name had been crossed out in red paint. Below it, smaller letters read "Road closed, 1987. We drove for another 40 miles before stopping at a gas station. The attendant looked at us funny and said, "You folks look like you have seen a ghost." None of us answered. We just filled the tank and kept driving until we were back in Kentucky. After that trip, we didn't talk about what happened. Not really. Sarah moved to Oregon 2 months later. She said she wanted to live near the ocean, away from the mountains. Marcus sold his SUV and started flying whenever he had to travel for work. He told me he was done with long drives. As for me, I still take road trips, but only on major highways. I never turn onto roads that aren't on Google Maps. I don't trust old blog posts about hidden gems anymore. Sometimes I think about Greyhollow. I tried looking it up once. There's no town by that name in West Virginia, but I did find one old newspaper article from 1987 about a small mining town that was shut down due to unusual circumstances. No specific name, no coordinates, just a mention that the residents left suddenly and the access road was closed by the state. The Polaroid. Sarah burned it the day we got home, but I still remember what it said. We stayed too long. And I wonder about those people in the photo. The ones who looked like us. Did they ever get out? Or are they still there, walking those empty streets at night, knocking on car windows, calling out in voices that aren't their own? Now when I drive through Appalachia, I check my GPS constantly. I only travel during the day. I stick to roads with traffic because I learned something that weekend. There are places that don't want to be found, and once you find them, they don't want to let you go. This happened when I was 23. Marcus and I both needed to get away. He's my older brother, 28 at the time, works construction in Roanoke. He'd just gone through a brutal breakup with his girlfriend of 5 years. Meanwhile, I just finished finals week at Virginia Tech, studying engineering, and my brain felt like it had been run through a blender. We were sitting in his apartment one Thursday night, both of us staring at our phones like zombies, when he looked up and said, "Let's just drive." I asked him where, and he shrugged. "Doesn't matter. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere we can clear our heads." I didn't even think about it. I just said yes. We threw together some supplies the next morning. Sleeping bags, a cooler with sandwiches and water, a paper map from 2008 that Marcus found in his glove box because neither of us trusted GPS once you got deep into the mountains. His truck was a 2003 Ford F-150, dark green, odometer reading 180,000 miles, but it ran solid. We left Roanoke around 3 in the afternoon, heading west into the hills of West Virginia. No plan, no destination, just the two of us and the open road. We drove through small towns that barely qualified as towns, gas stations with hand-painted signs, diners boarded up for years, faded billboards advertising products that didn't exist anymore. The highway narrowed as we got deeper into Appalachia, winding through dense forest and steep ridges. Around 6:30, we turned onto Route 52 heading toward Welch. The sun was starting to drop behind the mountains, and Marcus suggested we find a spot to pull off for the night instead of paying for some rundown motel. I agreed. About 20 minutes later, he spotted a dirt road branching off to the right. No name, no sign, just a gap in the trees. He turned onto it without asking. The road was rough, narrow, barely wide enough for the truck. Branches scraped the sides as we crawled forward. After about 20 minutes of that, we found a small clearing on the left, maybe 40 by 40 feet, flat and empty. Marcus pulled in, shut off the engine, and said, "This'll work." We ate our sandwiches in silence, sitting in the cab with the windows cracked. That's when I noticed something. There were no bugs, no crickets, no mosquitoes, nothing. Marcus tried the radio but got only static. The temperature dropped fast. By 9 it was 38 degrees. I looked out the window and saw nothing but black. No moonlight, no stars, just thick darkness pressing against the glass. We decided to sleep in the truck. Marcus stretched out in the back seat. I reclined the passenger seat as far as it would go. He fell asleep in minutes. I didn't. I kept staring at the roof of the cab, listening. Around 11:30, I heard something outside. A rustling sound, soft at first, then closer. It wasn't wind. It sounded like footsteps. Slow, deliberate, moving around the truck. I looked at the rearview mirror but couldn't see anything through the darkness. The footsteps stopped right outside my door. Then I heard it. 3 soft knocks on the window. Tap, tap, tap. My heart slammed into my ribs. I didn't move. I didn't look. I just sat there, frozen, staring straight ahead. I waited for something else to happen, but nothing did. The knocking stopped. The footsteps faded. I sat there for another 2 hours before exhaustion finally pulled me under around 2 in the morning. When I woke up at 7, sunlight was filtering through the trees. Everything looked normal. I climbed out of the truck to stretch my legs and immediately saw it. A smear of mud on the driver's side door handle. Black, thick, wet looking. It smelled like metal and rot. I checked the ground, no footprints, nothing. Marcus woke up and stepped out, yawning. He saw the mud and said, probably just runoff from the rain. I stared at him. It didn't rain last night. He paused, looked at the mud again, then shrugged. Let's just keep moving. We got back on the dirt road and kept heading west. The road got worse. Deep potholes, exposed roots, loose rocks that pinged off the undercarriage. After about 45 minutes, we hit a fork. No signs. Marcus chose the left path because it looked less traveled. The trees got thicker here, blocking out most of the sunlight even though it was almost noon. 10 minutes later, we saw it. A vehicle on the side of the road. A Chevrolet Blazer from the 90s, faded blue, driver's door hanging open. No license plate. Marcus stopped the truck and we both got out. The inside of the Blazer was trashed. Seats torn up, glass shattered, no keys, no personal belongings. But there was something written on the dashboard in black marker. 2 words, turn back. The letters were shaky, rushed, like someone wrote them in a panic. Marcus laughed. Someone's idea of a prank. I didn't think it was funny. We walked back to the truck and that's when I saw it. A fresh scratch on the passenger side door. Long, deep, running from the handle down toward the tire. It hadn't been there before. I pointed it out to Marcus. He crouched down, ran his finger along it. It looked like 3 parallel lines, like claws. He stood up, frowning. I don't know, man, maybe a branch, but I knew it wasn't a branch. He looked at me and said, "You want to turn around?" I hesitated. Part of me did. But another part of me didn't want to look like I was scared, so I shook my head. Let's keep going. We drove for another 30 minutes. The road opened up into what looked like an abandoned town. 5 or 6 wooden houses falling apart. A gas station with boarded windows. No cars, no people. We stopped to check the map. As soon as we stepped out, I saw him. An old man standing in front of one of the houses. Maybe 70 years old, weathered skin, long gray beard, wearing a torn flannel shirt. Marcus walked over and called out, "Excuse me, sir. Can you tell us how to get back to the highway?" The man didn't answer. He just stared at us for a long time. Then he slowly raised his arm and pointed back the way we came. Marcus tried again. "Is there a way through up ahead?" The old man shook his head. "Not for you." He started walking toward our truck, looking at the scratch on the door. He pointed at it and said, "It knows you now." Marcus frowned. "What knows us?" The man didn't answer. He turned around, walked into his house, and shut the door. We stood there for a moment. Marcus muttered, "Weird mountain folk. Let's go." I wanted to turn around right then, but Marcus was already getting back in the truck. He looked at me and said, "We didn't come all this way to turn around because some old guy said something creepy." I climbed in. We kept driving. An hour later, the road just ended. A wall of trees, too dense to drive through. There was no turnaround space. Marcus had to reverse in the dark because the sun was already setting. We decided to stop for the night right there. It was too dangerous to navigate that narrow road in the dark. We parked in a small dirt patch and sat in silence. Neither of us ate dinner. We just drank water and waited. Around 10, I heard it again. The rustling, the footsteps, but this time it was louder, more of them. Marcus heard it too. He sat up, eyes wide. "What the hell is that?" I didn't answer. We both stared out the windows but saw nothing. The footsteps circled the truck. Then the truck started to shake, not from wind. Not from the engine. It felt like something was pushing it from behind. Marcus turned the key and flipped on the headlights. The beams cut through the darkness ahead, nothing there. I looked in the rear-view mirror and I saw it, a shadow, tall, maybe 7 feet, standing about 10 feet behind the truck. It had no clear shape, just black, solid black, standing completely still. Marcus saw it too. He screamed, "Go, go, go." He threw the truck into reverse, spun the wheel, and we tore back down the road. We were flying down that dirt road at 40 miles per hour in complete darkness. The headlights only showed us 30 feet ahead. We hit potholes hard enough to rattle my teeth. Branches slapped the windshield. I kept my eyes on the rearview mirror, and I saw it. That thing was following us, not running, not walking, just moving, fast, too fast. It kept pace with us even though we were doing 40. Marcus was gripping the wheel so hard his knuckles were white. We hit the fork and he took a hard right toward the main road. After about 10 minutes, the road widened and we picked up speed. I checked the mirror again. Nothing. It was gone. We didn't stop. We drove for 2 straight hours until we hit Route 52. We pulled into a 24-hour gas station in Welch. Both of us were shaking. I got out to check the truck. No new scratches. But the entire back end was covered in that black mud. The same mud from the door handle. Thick, wet, reeking. A local man walked up while Marcus was pumping gas. He looked at the truck, looked at the mud, then looked at us. "You boys were up on Harlan Ridge, weren't you?" Marcus nodded. The man shook his head slowly. "Shouldn't have gone up there. People don't come back from there the same." Then he walked away. We drove back to Roanoke in silence. 3 hours of nothing but the hum of the engine and the sound of tires on asphalt. We pulled into Marcus's driveway at 5 in the morning, just as the sun started to rise. We sat there for a minute, staring at the mud-covered truck. Finally, Marcus said, "We don't talk about this, ever." I nodded. Agreed. A few days later, Marcus tried to wash the truck. He scrubbed it 3 times, but the mud left dark stains that wouldn't come out. I started having nightmares, the same one. That black shadow standing behind the truck, just watching. Marcus got quieter. He stopped talking about the trip entirely. We never mentioned Appalachia again. I looked up Harlan Ridge online. There's no official information about it. Just a few old forum posts from 2015 and 2018 about people going missing in that area. 6 months later, Marcus sold the truck. He called me and said, "I can't drive it anymore. Every time I look in the rear view, I think I see something." I understood. We're still close, but we don't take road trips anymore. I still think about that night, what was chasing us, what wanted us to turn back, and why we were stupid enough to ignore every warning. Some roads aren't meant to be traveled, and some things in those mountains don't want to be found. We found them anyway, and I think part of us never really left.